Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Good, good, Professor. How are you?
Very good. So we are right now about to start GVSU Virtual Climate Change Student Symposium, and we are kind of right now in that setting mode. So I am going to pause the recording, and we'll just start with the setup. So this is our kind of open doors time before we start student presentation. So those of you who are already here online, welcome. This is Virtual Climate Student Symposium. Our program time is starting at 9:30, but the student presentations actually would start at 10 a.m. So you are welcome to be here with us during the setup time when we are not recording, or you can start at 10 o'clock. And I see that many people are already in the audience with questions. So we'll take quickly those questions and then we'll start with the setup. And once again, good morning and welcome everyone, or maybe good afternoon if you are joining us from a different time zone. So this is virtual Climate Change Student Symposium at GVSU Student Scholar Day. It's an extended session at the Student Scholar Day when we celebrate our undergraduate scholarship in all disciplines. And we started this session during the pandemic, like now 5 or 6 years ago, when we could not have a poster session or oral presentations. And since the time, we have been keeping this virtual climate change student symposium, and it actually has been growing every year, proving that this virtual format has been working very, very well, allowing us to make this event open not only to GVSU climate campus community, but to much broader audience. And of course, this year we're also trying to weave this event and many other climate presentations with Global Climate Change Week in October 2026 that GVSU is leading this year. So I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Elena Lubimtseva. I'm a professor of geography and sustainable planning here at GVSU, and I'm one of the leaders of GVSU Climate Change Education Solution Network that we founded in 2017. So this event, being an extended session of the Student Scholar Day, and it is going to start at 10 o'clock with the first presentation on nature-based solution and ADA standards for accessible design compliance by Brian Hess. If you have been here since 9:30, you just briefly met Brian, and of course we will properly introduce him at 10 o'clock. Then at 10:30, we would have a presentation on understanding climate emotions and critical hope by Hannah Weller, and she will present her research that she conducted over the past 2 years through GLISA project. Again, Hannah will introduce her project and her work, and I had a pleasure to work with her as her mentor. Then at 11 o'clock, we would have a presentation by impacts of climate change on cocoa production in West Africa by multiple presenters, Emily Felder, Hannah Weller, Kamaya Boone, and Maya Badges, and they're all my students in environmental studies and geography for 12, global climate and environmental change. So this is their capstone project. Then at 11:30, we would have another project from the same class, impacts of climate change on wildfires in Western United States by Honorag, Augustus Ripple, and Evan Olson. And this is also one of the capstone projects in this class. And then at 12, we would have our final presentation on impacts of climate change on the Northwest Passage in the Arctic. This is a very interesting project focusing on Greenland and the changing geopolitics in this region due to climate change. And this project will be presented by Antonia Simon, Sarah Corner, and Eva Wright. And this project is also coming from ANS GPY 412, Global Climate Change as a capstone project. So meanwhile, as our speakers are getting ready to present, I just want to use a little bit of time to briefly introduce GVSU Climate Change Education Solutions Network, our upcoming summit, and just overall tell you a little bit about what's going on with CCESN. And especially if you are relatively new, if you haven't attended our events before, I would like to introduce GVSU Climate Change Education Solutions Network. But first, I want to start with the land acknowledgement. So today we would like to recognize the people of the three fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi people on whose land we are gathered on today. Three fires people are indigenous to this land, which means that this is their ancestral territory. Every university in this country was built on indigenous land. We conduct land acknowledgements as a reminder of the histories, teachings, traditions, and the first people who originated here and who have been tended to Mshikiki always. We conduct this acknowledgement to be good visitors, as this was always done before colonial contact. To continue to be good visitors, we have the responsibility to learn about the history of colonialism and its impact on indigenous people. So thank you again very much for being here, and welcome to CCESN, and welcome to the Student Scholar Day at GVSU. And of course, in many parts of the world, April is also the time of Earth celebration. It's the time of climate action. It's a time of environmental justice. It's a month of sustainability activities, sustainability tips, and it's all should culminate with Earth Day on April 22nd. So whether you are celebrating your Earth Day on April 22nd only, or every day, or every month, I wanted to encourage you all to engage not only in this session, but in many other climate action and climate education events happening here on campus and really around the world. So this is also an excellent time to start planning your own events in preparation for the Global Climate Change Week, which is happening in October. And this year, GCCW falls on October 12th through 18th. So this is traditionally has been the third week of October, that we can really celebrate Global Climate Week and climate action anytime in October or any time, and we should be doing it every day. But I want to encourage you all, if you are planning any Global Climate Change Week events, to register them, to amplify their impact, and to let other people know, both locally and globally, about what you are doing, because chances are that if you are doing this event, it's going to inspire others, maybe in a different country, maybe on a different university campus. But we want to help you to amplify this event, and this is why GVSU Climate Change Education Solutions Network also maintains the map. We're kind of the guardians of the GCCW map this year, and we would love to put your event on the map. So please make sure that you register your event, and I'm going to quickly share my screen so that if you are not familiar with the Climate Network, you will know where to find this information. So if you click on the upper tab of the Climate Change Education Solutions Network menu, you will see Global Climate Change Week, and you will find this announcement in many languages, and you will find the registration button and the Google Map. And this Google Map is really changing every single day as more and more people have been adding their events around the world. So I wanted to say a huge thank you to those of you who have already added this event. Just past week, we had 10 more registration, and really every week since the registration opened has been adding more events. So please stay tuned, check other people events, so you can click on any of those buttons, placeholders on the map, and see what other people are doing. And I hope that this information would inspire you to participate in the Global Climate Week. Here at Grand Valley, we are welcoming you to the Global Climate Change Week with the already eighth annual CCS, so Climate Change Education Solutions Summit 2026 is going to take place October 14th, 15th, both in person and virtually. And this year we will focus on ways of knowing in climate change education. So October 14th will be entirely in person here on campus. This year we are hosting these events on Grand Valley campus in Allendale, in Kirkhoff. Some of you might be familiar with this location. This is where we host the summit every other year, and on the alternative years, we host it on our city campus in DeVos Hall, downtown Grand Rapids. So the registration is already open, and I welcome all of you to join the CCS this year. This event, of course, is always free for the public, and it's open for everyone. And this is our annual multidisciplinary international conference that we host every year since 2019. And it's a wonderful forum for all students, faculty, staff, community partners, all our guests from around the world to come and share ideas about climate change solutions. And so this year, summit in particular is focusing on ways of knowing in climate change education, bringing a variety of different perspectives on how we can do a better job in addressing climate change, solving climate crisis, and teaching our students, our communities, our friends, our families about how we can better address climate crisis and many other environmental and social crises that have been kind of unfolding in connection with climate change. So if you haven't yet registered, this is a perfect time to click on the registration button and provide your information. This is also a call for proposals because we would love to hear from you. You know, this is really a community. This is not just a university conference, it's a community conference. And we would love to see your proposals for workshops, for presentations, for activities, for field trips. We welcome tabling from all organizations near and from nearby and far away. And we hope to hear from you. So this is also a great time to submit your abstract with ideas about what you would like to present at the CCS 2026. And the topics we would love to see here are especially indigenous and traditional ecological knowledge, decolonizing climate change, education and research, outdoor, place-based and experiential learning, critical and transformative pedagogies, transdisciplinary teaching and learning, teaching nature-based solutions in practice. Had many conversations about AI and what it can do for good, but also what are the major challenges, environmental and social implications of AI as you know, the landscape of education is moving forward so quickly. How we can address solastalgia, and the solastalgia is really the form of nostalgia associated with the loss and grief of the environment that is literally collapsing in front of our eyes. So how we can address solastalgia, how we can address climate depression, eco-anxiety through climate action. We would love to see proposals addressing land ethics and especially the paradigm of rights of nature and what it means for you in your discipline, not necessarily only legal perspectives on rights of nature. We hope that we would come together to explore various pathways to escape ecological overshoot and also discuss how we can overcome partisanship in climate change awareness. So there are different ways of how you can frame your proposals. You could propose a panel discussion with 3-5 panelists, and you could moderate this discussion, or you can invite a moderator. We can help you to organize the 6-minute interactive workshop and provide a space and everything you need to set it up. You could propose a 60-minute session and include your own speakers and presenters, or you can just propose your individual 20-minute presentation, and that can be on site or online. We'll also have a poster session and art exhibit. So poster session also would be open both to GVSU students, but also everyone, in the community, faculty, staff, community members are also very welcome to present their art exhibits and posters. So all you need to do is to submit your abstract proposal by July 31st, and we will review it and get back to you to discuss what will be the best space and format and the day of your presentation. And so again, I want to remind that October 14th is entirely in person. It's an in-person event. It's not going to be broadcasted. And then October 15th, it's going to be entirely online. So if you would rather present it in the setting similar to what you're experiencing right now, maybe October 15th would be a perfect day for you. This is also the time when we want to invite everyone to consider sponsoring CCS 2026. So if you want to be a sponsor, you could give any amount to GVSU. Please do not send your funding support directly to us. You can send it to GVSU. And so if you are a part of GVSU community, if you are representing your department, please contact Geography and Sustainable Planning Department, which is home to GVSU Climate Change Education Solutions Network. And our office coordinator would work with your department to make sponsorship transfer. If you are joining us from the community and want to be a sponsor, you can make a donation to GVSU. And as you are doing it, just be mindful that there are many other units that are enjoying your support, community support. So if you want to give to GVSU for the Climate Change Education Solutions Network, please make sure that you click on Make a Selection and scroll down to Climate Change Education Solutions Network, just to make sure that your donation would go exactly where you intend to send it. So as I said, there are many other recipients, so make sure that you put Climate Change Education Solutions Network in this line. And if you are a GVSU faculty or GVSU staff member or GVSU administrator, we also very much welcome your support, and you can make a monthly donation or one-time donation through payroll. So there are different ways to support Climate Change Education Solutions Network, and we're very grateful for your support because this is what allows our department and the entire GVSU community to make this conference entirely open for the public and make it available for everyone without a registration fee. So either you are a presenter, whether you are a presenter or just attending, there is no registration fee to attend this conference. I also wanted to express my gratitude to GVSU CCS 2026 Planning Committee. So this is a truly interdisciplinary effort. It takes a village to create a conference, and this is an effort of many divisions at Grand Valley. So many thanks to Brian Dale from English, Abby Fords, Student Affairs, Yumi Jakobczyk, Office of Sustainability, Azizur Mallah from Public Health, Heather Moody from Geography and Environmental Science, Tierney Powell from English, Jordan Stroll from Biology, and Rebecca Williams, Interdisciplinary Studies. And I also wanted to say thank you to all our students, and our students are about to showcase our work in a few minutes. As we are getting ready for the first presentation, I also want to quickly share an opportunity to join us tomorrow and learn more and hear more from our students tomorrow in person. And if you are here on campus or if you are nearby, please come to the clock tower tomorrow at 1 o'clock as we invite you to join environmental and sustainability studies students as they stage a walkout for sustainability and climate action here on campus tomorrow, Thursday, April 9th, from 1 to 2 p.m. And we will be here at the clock tower. Will join us to hear directly from the students as they voice their demands for stronger climate action and sustainability action here at Grand Valley. So with this, we are exactly at 10 o'clock, and this is time for me to introduce Brian Hess. Hey, Brian, are you here? Well, we know that Brian is here, so I hope that he will join us in a minute. Meanwhile, does anyone have any questions? And once again, if you have just joined us, the Q&A button is available for you. So if you have any questions, or if you just want to say hello and voice where you are from, you can drop your name in the Q&A. You can also drop your questions for me or to our wonderful speakers to the Q&A. And chat would be disabled for the audience. Chat would be only available for the panelists. So don't try to put your questions to Brian in the chat because he would not be able to see it. But you can interact with me. All right, so all limelight now is on Brian Hess, and Brian has been working on this project since the end of August. He started this project as a student in GPY 410, Landscape Analysis and Green Infrastructure, and it was a great pleasure and honor for me to work with him as his mentor. We started this project as a course project, as a capstone project, focusing on green infrastructure here on campus in Grand Ravine. So our local audience is certainly familiar with this beautiful site, beautiful extension of the ravines that is a part of GVSU campus. This is a wonderful learning, living lab, and we want to learn how to be better stewards of this land. And Brian has really many great ideas about it. But first of all, I want to make sure that Brian introduces himself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then please share your slides. And I wanted also just to remind you all that we are recording all these presentations, and the recordings will be available at the CCESN website and the Student Scholar website. So welcome, Brian, and please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Brian Heiss. I'm a geography major with GIS technology, and I am an undergrad. So my presentation is on the GVSU Grand Ravines. It encompasses some nature-based solutions and some ADA compliance. Some of the background, the ravine trails are just over 10,000 to 15,000 years old. An architect in 1961, in conjunction with some university planners, decided to look at the ravines. Professor Flanders set up a field laboratory for archaeological and research at Blenheim Landings. And in 1973, the nature trails opened to the public for the first time during Earth Week. So the idea is some of the nature-based solutions. They are like the green infrastructure that is defined as ways to mitigate and use the lands to help protect the environment, and some other natural infrastructures that include, the watershed scale, the land conservation, which helps preserve the interconnected systems of the open spaces for our community, some wetland restoration and protections, basically restoring and protecting wetlands that can improve quality of the water and reduce flooding. and healthy wetlands filter and absorb and slow the runoff. And then floodplain restoration, which is undisturbed floodplains that help keep waterways healthy and by reducing storm floodwaters and reducing erosion. Some of the goals and objectives are upgrading the existing Grand Valley State University's Amarillo campus trail network for ADA compliant standards, provide students and faculty trails that everyone can use and enjoy, and provide opportunities for educational learning environments. And as a university as a whole, be good stewards to the environment. Some introductions. The American Disabilities Act first came about, or in some form, was 1986, when the National Council on Disability proposed a first of its kind comprehensive opportunity law. And in July 26, 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act becomes law. George W. Bush was the president at that time. And in 1991, Title 1, 2, 3, and 4 also become law. Some methodology. The study area, as you can see from the Google Maps, encompasses the ravine trails behind Calder Plaza, or excuse me, Calder Fine Arts Center, all the way to the GVSU Boathouse. The ravines trails are masked by a heavy canopy of trees with very few man-made areas visible. And also the visible areas are an empty retention pond, an area of clear trees with silver drainage pipes that are used in a ditch along the potentially along the roads. For methodology continued, I had visited the study area 10 times between September 4th and October 15th, 2015. During those times, I walked the trails. I got a sense of the environment. Some of the tools that I had utilized are an iPad, iPhone, and my Nikon D850. And as you can see on the right image, it's just a rough bird's eye view of the trails with various landmarks or observations noted. Between October 28th and October 31st of 2025, I had conducted a site survey where I had dropped 360 points using a Garmin handheld GPS. The entire process took roughly 8 hours to complete. That included digitizing the GPS points. And some of the tools I used were wooden sticks, a hatchet, an iPhone, and ArcGIS Pro. And the image on the right shows kind of the university buildings in regards to ravines. Also, as you can see in the ravines, the red areas indicate the top, while the darker green areas start going into the ravines with green or light blue areas as the floodplain, and the red points indicate my path. For trail photography, this is just what the status of the trails were in the fall, and figure 1E shows major erosion along the trail and the hillsides. Here we could use natural-based systems like floodplain restoration, excuse me, and some wetland protection. Here, some of the results are the corridors were identified. Well, the types of corridors that were identified were a walking trail, a foot trail, a wildlife habitat, and a floodplain. There are heavy erosions, exposed tree roots, and the trail consisted of decaying leaves, mulch, and areas of trees that have been thinned, and wooden bridges over the streams. I had some discussions with the wellness director on GVSU. They had mentioned they used Fishbeck engineering firm to conduct a trail study. The goal is to bring collective and diverse voices from all over the communities and our members, and identify short-term and long-term enhancements that evaluate the awareness and vulnerability ecosystem, and in conjunction with Ottawa County GIS data. Some of the project ideas are a boardwalk with footpaths. The following images were provided by Kevin Dennis, who is a park manager at Quantum Falls State Park, and the engineering firm Sanders, Kozetsky and Associates from Marquette, Michigan. So Quantum Falls has is near completing the boardwalk or revamping of the boardwalk. The boardwalk is a 900-foot structure that utilizes aluminum galvanized anchor points with a coating that helps prolong the rusting process. And the goal of this was to provide a near maintenance free boardwalk for everyone to utilize. The initial budget was $2 million with $150,000 for the engineering consultants. And they used COVID relief funds. And with the construction of this, they made it ADA compliant by making a 2% grade when notable. And here is the structure under the boardwalk. This can be used along the Grand River as it is flooding right now. So it helps keep the boardwalk up. These are some of the works I cited. Oops, go ahead.
I had taken all images myself,
Oh, crap.
created them at
And here's some more references. The future reviewing project is ongoing. Future updates includes, budget interactive field maps and reviews with stakeholders. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Brian, for excellent presentation. You have project, I think, going far beyond, what was required in class, and like so many great ideas of how, GVSU could, redevelop and steward, this wonderful resource that we have and make it really available for everyone. So I want to invite our audience to send questions through the Q&A. So just once again, please don't use chat. It would be easier for you to interact with us through Q&A. All you need to do is just click on Q&A and type your question, and I will read it loud, and both Brian and I would be able to see it. So as you are thinking about your questions, meanwhile, you really look at this question from the perspective of, GVSU stakeholder, you're our student, like you are paying tuition, you are a part of this community. It's both academic experience, but also you are thinking about this project as a citizen of this campus and citizen of this community. And so what are your thoughts about how we can go from where we are right now? So we have this beautiful but highly underutilized and not very well upkept resource on campus, and how we can go from where we are right now to what you envision, using the model of the Trocominan Falls Park, or maybe some other places that you have explored. So it's a long stretch, right? Like where we are right now and where you want to take us. And like as a student, as someone who has a campus experience, like what do you think we need to do to do it better?
Great question. Ideally, I would love for us to develop to kind of look at the Quantum Falls as something we can do here. We can build switchbacks on the other side of campus towards the boathouse where you could have solar power charging stations if people had like mobile carts or scooters type of thing. And a boardwalk that goes along the river that is high enough to, for the most part, withstand a lot of the floodwaters. Because currently it's flooded right now, and just have a nice smooth trail that's easily maintained. They're using some composite woods, some aluminums, some other types of materials that could last 15 to 20 years in harsh environments. And on the side of the campus that has the washed out areas, we could put a series of landing steps that allow people who like to do steps and all those type of things to utilize that side of the campus. But also we would need to put the natural grasses that were there prior for restoration and more trees that would anchor the hillsides. So when large rains come, it'll be harder to erode. So the goal would be to, instead of using an engineering firm like Fishbeck, utilize the campus knowledge and make it a learning experience for the engineering department, the geography department, a lot of other departments on campus that could propose these types of proposals and utilize the maps or CAD blueprints and all that, but just have an engineering firm to certify it. That would save us money, and it would get more people involved on campus that could respect and utilize their trails much more if they had a stake in the process.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for your answer. We have more questions from the audience, so I will start I will start reading them so that you could answer them live. So we have a question from Cat Hart. What was the purpose of the wooden stakes? Did you map both sides of the trail?
Yes. That's how I decided to tackle the mapping of the trails. I set them two stakes on one on each side of the ravines or the trails that I saw the worn out path with, and I would take a GPS the handheld unit and just alternate the points. But then when I got the 6 points or 12 points captured, I would take up the stakes and I would do the process all the way to the end of the trail to the boathouse.
And this is a remarkable amount of work. Like I really admire, like all your, like whatever with the weather, right? You kind of was working on this project from, what was it, like from you started it in early September and you finished in December, and you probably, like, and then you were writing these results. So this is very, very commendable. And as much as possible, of course, like as your mentor, as your faculty, I want to see project like yours being implemented. I don't want to see them, just forgotten on the bookshelf,
Right.
beyond the grade. And so I really love that you have this, great ideas about how we can do a better job as a university in using in-house expertise of our faculty and our students, because it looks like an excellent interdisciplinary project that could involve geography and engineering and geology and potentially biology. We had other projects in this course also, kind of focusing on similar issues, more addressing them from, perhaps humanities perspective or environmental studies perspective, because there are so many, or health perspective, right? And so, I think you made a very good observation that the university is using many kind of external providers and consultants for the work that potentially could be a learning experience for our students, and could also tap into in-house expertise and research of faculty on campus.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the issue some of the things we could potentially propose is getting all the stakeholders, whether it's the dean, the president, and department faculty, and produce a plan that says, hey, here's what we can do it. This is money we could save. We still consult, but it makes people if they have a stake in things, they take care of it more and their ideas can grow. And then if other new students see this, well, this project can go on for years to come, and can, and provide a great opportunity, right, to learn or use the ravines as a natural or outdoor classroom, looking at wildlife to erosion, to tree management. So
absolutely. So I have been using the ravines, I think, for as many years as I have been in Grand Valley, and it has been now 25 years. And this is a great learning living lab, but we also kind of have seen, especially in the past maybe 4 or 5 years, kind of decline of the maintenance of that space, because it's not of the part of the major visible grounds. And so I really, really hope that, the entire campus community sees the huge value of this space for our students, for our community who could just come here and come for a walk and enjoy this walk just as much as in the Grand Ravines Park nearby. And of course, it's a wonderful space for our faculty and students to do research and learn. Any more questions? And I don't know if you have any comments, or it's, taking me outside of your project?
No, I think, thanks for the help with this project. It's definitely been a really good learning experience, and I want to keep going with this project. Because I think once we can take the goal would be to take this model we built here and use it for, South Carolina or
Mhm.
other areas that have huge populations of students and use this to help make everyone else's trails or open spaces for everyone. And also, I hope we can get the university to kind of not buy into it so much, but support us in trying to develop a interdisciplinary class that encompasses all different facets of this and could produce great things for this project and any other project in the community or Grand Valley. And also, in the next couple years, I think we'll see the Grand Ravines and GVSU trails kind of merge or connect a little bit because they're doing the Greenway from Grand Rapids all the way to the lakeshore, and we are kind of located in a prime area to have people utilize the trails. So I think that's be a great thing. We just have to keep pressing and make it work.
Thank you. This is a great observation. Yes, gosh, we are just kind of in the middle of that green belt, and now there is a great collaboration between Kent County and Ottawa County. So Grand Rapids is in Kent County, and they just kind of started doing similar work to the work that Ottawa County has been doing for many, many years now, gradually working with homeowners and so many homeowners with, who own part of the water frontage along Grand River have been donating their land to the parks and participating in the stewardship effort so that eventually everybody could walk and bike and enjoy the trails all the way from Grand Rapids to the lakeshore. And what is your experience from the conversation with Ottawa County Parks? You mentioned in your presentation that you actually interviewed a few people from Ottawa County Parks and Recreation. Do you see any potential for GVSU to develop stronger collaboration with Ottawa County Parks? Because we literally have one beautiful park just upstream and the other downstream, and then we have this not very well maintained area in between. And so how we can learn from working with Ottawa County Parks to perhaps just do it in the same way, or maybe cede this land to the parks and make it public?
I think right now our relationship with Ottawa County Parks is great. There's definitely collaboration between, the wellness, Aaron, Moen, and the Ottawa County Parks. There's definitely some great coordination, providing data and some other things. And there was a mention potential. Right now, the issue is if they connect the parks, security issue of, GVSU police and those type of things for the safety of students. But in the future, we might see the trails be ceded to Ottawa County so they can maintain them. Because they are great stewards of the Grand Ravines next door, and they do a lot of great things over there. So I see a greater partnership in the coming years to really set ourselves as help with green infrastructure, trails, a great steward of the environment for all.
Thank you. I have another question from the audience. So what was the percentage of the Ravines Trail do you estimate you mapped out?
Well, the one I mapped out probably one of the trails itself, probably about 80%, 90%. There's a few areas that go around like a little island that connects to that other part of the trail I mapped. But about 90% of that trail got mapped from the one I chose from the Calder Art Center area all the way down to the edge of the boathouse, little parking area, little gravel pit.
This is absolutely impressive. Well, once again, thank you so much for this excellent presentation. Good luck with implementation. Please let me know, let everybody in our department know, how we can support implementation of this project on campus. Again, many thanks. Thank you for the people in the audience for the great questions. We are going to start transitioning to the next presentation. So it's great to see
Thank
you,
you,
Brian.
Professor. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will start transitioning to our next presenter. Hannah Weller would start prompt at 10:30, so she is already here. So we have a little bit of time to transition. So Brian, I'm going to ask you to leave the screen and you're welcome to continue with the audience link. We are going right now to focus on screen only on Hannah.
Yeah, thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Bye.
And Hannah, you can start testing sharing your screen whenever you're ready. Again, thank you for being here a couple of minutes earlier. So we will start with your presentation exactly at 10:30, but you're welcome to start sharing the screen.
How does that look?
Yeah, it looks perfect. It looks wonderful. And I guess, we can just start whenever you are ready, if you feel that you are ready. So this is a great project, and it was also a great opportunity for me to work with Hannah and a group of other students on we stand on the shoulders of the previous student team who have been working with me on this project for the past 2 years. And this is an external grant that supported our ELF project in collaboration with Muskegon Community College and West Michigan Environmental Council, where we had an opportunity to work with the community, with community college students, with school students and teachers on exploring what are the better ways to address climate emotions, climate grief, climate anxiety, solastalgia that I mentioned earlier today. And so there were 2 cohorts of students that started this project more than 2 years ago now, almost 3 years ago. This project was started by our team with 2 undergraduate students, researchers, Riley Dietz and Rebecca Labers, who laid the ground to just the infrastructure of this project, building relationships with West Michigan Environmental Council and building relationships with Muskegon Community College through this grant. And then more students followed, and then Hannah joined this project. I remember you first joined us as a volunteer because you wanted to learn more, and you were such a wonderful addition to the team that I was absolutely thrilled when you decided also join our team. And so again, we're very fortunate to secure several grants, including some grants from the Office of Undergraduate Research and Scholarship at GVSU, and then this external grant from NOAA as well. And so now we are just wrapping up this project. And during the second stage of the project, Riley and also Amanda Daniels and Hannah Weller were working with Muskegon Public Schools, and they reached out to many schools. And then one of the schools actually was interested to work with our team and opened their doors. And so students made multiple visits to the school and had an opportunity to interact with students. And so all this has resulted to this wonderful project that Hannah is presenting today. So Hannah, thank you very much for being here. Please introduce yourself. Let the audience know a little bit about who you are. I know that you have multiple capacities. You're working not only with this project, you have your major, your minor, you're working on other projects at Grand Valley. And especially because you are also presenting in the following presentation, you really need to tell us a little bit more about yourself. And then whenever you're ready, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Hannah Weller. I'm a second-year student here at Grand Valley. My major is Environmental and Sustainability Studies, and I'm also minoring in Environmental Science and Business, and also gain an Advanced American Sign Language badge, which is just a little side quest of mine, and I really enjoy. But as Elena said, I've been working on this project for about a year now. I joined as a volunteer because I was so interested, and then I was able to become a research assistant, which has been really an amazing experience. So Elena gave a great background of the project. I also have a little background, so we can go through that pretty quickly. and then we'll get to my research. So this is GVSU's ELF project, Climate Change Education. So I'm just going to go over the project and then talk about my research and then the takeaways. So this is our team. It has many people, great people. So Elena is our principal investigator, and then there's been 4 research assistants, as she said. Riley Dietz and Rebecca Lubbers were the first 2. They were here for about 1.5 to 2 years, and they have both graduated. They really laid the groundwork for us and did so much amazing work. And then Amanda Daniels joined about 1.5 years in, and I joined a year in, and we worked together very well on the working with the classroom. That was our main piece, and giving those classroom presentations. And then we also have multiple community partners with Muskegon Community College, and then also with the University of Michigan. And those people are listed. So ELF stands for Elevating Youth Leadership and Peer Learning to Support Climate Change Adaptation in West Michigan Lakeshore Frontline Communities. And the goal of it was to enhance Great Lakes communities' capacity to understand and, sorry, I gotta move my screen so I can see, to understand, plan for, and respond to climate impacts now and the future. And we use different tools such as the Climate and Hazard Mitigation Planning, CHAMPS tool, and the Great Lakes Climatology Interactive Map to understand the land and the climate there. But then also we had a Muskegon County focus because frontline youth face overlapping non-climatic stressors, including racism, poverty, housing, and transport disparities, food insecurity, and community safety issues. It was really important to everyone to have a community that would benefit from learning more about climate change because there's those previous and under or overlapping non-climatic stressors. So here is how we integrated climate. The first goal was to have lesson plans on climate change, impacts, vulnerabilities, and climate adaptation, aligning with the Michigan science standards. And then we also had teaching materials, guest presentations, and professional development, including mini grants. So some of those presentations I was not a part of because they were before I joined, but I understand that there's different meetings and presentations to just lay the groundwork of this project. And then it also involved collaboration with Muskegon Community College and giving them the groundwork to develop climate change curriculum. And then there's 2 courses that came out of that, which is GPY 101 and GPI 112. So the methodologies for the research were having an educator survey that was sent out to 9 organizations and schools to gather information on time spent teaching about climate and what educators need in order to teach it successfully. And then there was also a focus group with 8 organizations and schools, and that also gathered information for climate education and just to see if there's any interest in collaboration. From there, a call for proposals was sent out to those groups. And once that was sent out, we received a collaboration with Oakview Elementary, and that started during the summer with different meetings and what they would want and need and preparing for our lesson plans and our presentations. So now we're going to get into my research. So my project included some research and then a lesson plan creation and then the presentation. So the methodologies I used for my research first was bibliographic research. As many people do, I had never created a lesson plan before, so my first step was understanding the best way to create a lesson plan for the grade that I was aiming for, which was 3rd grade. So I looked into different lesson plans. Elena helped me a lot with this, and I learned what the different procedures are, and I chose the best one for my lesson. And then I also researched how to teach climate change to young students. It's a very difficult topic, as many of you know, so it was really important to me to teach it in a way that students would understand and not just let it pass through their head. I wanted them to really understand what I was trying to teach to them. And then again, just teaching climate change, the basics, the easiest way for them to understand. And then I also researched more about climate change and emotions, the grief and anxiety that comes from understanding that the climate is going to change. What can we do about it? How it makes you feel and how it is a scary topic. And then that led me to talk about critical hope. So critical hope is this idea of hope, but with action and effort, and it's understanding that not everything is going to go perfect, but it's hoping that it will, and then putting in the work to get there. So it's not just the idea of hope where, oops, I hope this works out. I hope this works out. It's more of an action and more of putting in the effort to get to that hope. And then additionally, I have prior knowledge on the subject. I learned about critical hope and grief in one of my classes, and that's what inspired me to do this. And I wanted to teach it to younger kids because I thought that it might be beneficial for them to know it growing up. And then I also have experience with children, which was helpful knowing that I kind of knew how to talk with kids already. And I received support from Elena and also Dr. Rebecca Williams. She's the one who taught me about critical hope, and I was able to share my presentation with her and get feedback, and that was very helpful. So the lesson plan, here's an overview of it. The title is Climate Change, Understanding Emotions and Critical Hope. It's made for upper elementary, and the time of it is about one class period. The objectives, the students will understand the basics of climate change and its relevance to their lives, interests, and location. They will be aware of the emotions that climate change may bring about. They will learn about critical hope and how utilizing it can tackle these difficult emotions. And they will also enjoy hands-on activities that allow them to gain a deeper understanding of critical hope. And the procedure I followed was engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate, which Elena helped me with. So here's an outline of the lesson plan and my research and the presentation, just so everyone can understand what I was trying to achieve here. So for the engage and explore with the students, I introduced the lesson. I introduced myself because I was coming in as a guest speaker. And from my research and what I learned, it's very important to set the tone before the lesson. So I set the tone as a very discussion heavy tone because I just wanted to see how the students were feeling. I didn't want to tell them how to feel. I wanted to learn how they were feeling and then work from there. So I began by asking them about nature and getting their understanding of how they felt about nature, trying to draw out that emotional reaction, bring up old memories with nature. And I inserted some of my own opinions, but not a ton, just saying how much I enjoyed nature, asking how they enjoyed it. And then we talked about change or climate change and the idea of change and trying to build that connection of understanding that there's emotions tied with change. So then my explain section, I talked to them about the basic climate change concepts. I had previously asked them about it just to see who knew about it and who had heard of it. There are some students that knew a lot, some didn't know very much. So it was nice to give them a few. I believe I gave them like 6 key takeaways about climate change so they just understood what we were talking about. And then we discussed the emotions tied to change and climate change and just how that could be something that's good and change can also be something that's bad and it can be something that's neutral. Change doesn't have to be one of those things. It can have many emotions. And then I introduced the idea of hope, the original hope, just the hoping something works out for your benefit. And then for my explain section, we started talking about critical hope, which again is hope, but with action and a purpose. And the kids really grasped onto this idea. I was a little nervous that they wouldn't understand it, but they did. They're 3rd graders, so they're very smart. And I was really happy that they understood it. And then we compared to regular hope and just differentiated between the two. And again, I asked them a lot of questions and they were able to reiterate what I'd said before back to me. I thought that was really cool. And then I emphasized taking action. And so I wanted to get the takeaway of climate change and how we can all take action in our own ways. But I also related it to some of their interests like sports and school. So they could really, even if they didn't care as much about climate change as I do, they could at least use critical hope in their own lives. And then the activity we did, I was really excited about. So I don't know if anyone's ever used the little capsules that expand in water into different things, but that's what I use for my activity. So I gave them a little capsule in a cup, and that was their hope. That was what they wanted. And then to make it critical hope, we had to add the critical hope water. And this helped them understand that the water was supposed to be the effort and the action. And I don't know if anyone's used these, but once you add the water, the capsules expand into little sponge animals. And it was really fun to do. And they all understood it. And I was so happy with it because they understood that nothing was going to happen to the capsule unless you added the water. So then tying that to critical hope, it was really cool to see them pick up on that. And then the evaluate section, we reflected on activity. And yeah, they reiterated back to me that they needed the water, they needed the critical hope and the action to make their capsule expand. And yeah, it was really cool. And then we went over everything that they learned, and it was just a review of everything. So the presentation was on October 27th. Here's a picture of me. I thought it went really well. We presented to 3 third-grade classrooms, and we rotated to Amanda and I went there that day. Riley was supposed to join us, but she was sick, so we had a rotation and we were able to present. And I thought that the students took it well. As I said before, they seem to have learned a lot. And then they also it was a really good group to work with. They're very engaging, they're very talkative, and I thought that it went well. And additionally, because Riley was sick, we went back a different day for Riley's presentation, and I joined her, and some of the students remembered me and remembered what I had been teaching about, and they remembered the little activity, and I was just happy to talk to them about that and know that a month later they still remembered it. So here are my takeaways from the project. Overall, this is just an amazing project to be a part of. As Elena said, I had said I started as a volunteer because I was just new to Grand Valley and researching different groups I could be a part of, and I found this, and it's been amazing to work with everyone. There's so many accomplishments before me and the people who laid the groundwork, and then there's been great collaboration since then, and I just feel like it's just an amazing project to be a part of. And there's so much that has been done that can't fit into a 30-minute presentation. But personally, I was really happy with how the lesson plan went out and the presentation went well. I felt like it was very successful. I felt like I learned a lot about myself. It put me in a position I've never been. I've never been an educator myself. I've worked with kids, but I've never been in the position of standing in front of a classroom of 20 kids all talking at you. So it was really cool. And then it was also really fulfilling. When you're really passionate about something, it's really nice to see other people, even kids, understand it and get something out of it. So I enjoyed being able to see these kids take on my passion and learn something. And yeah, any questions?
Wow, thank you so much. This is such a great presentation. And Hannah, when I work with you, I always feel both as a mentor and a mentee because I have learned so much from you, having an opportunity to work with you and others on this project. And so thank you so much. And this is a really beautiful presentation. And I hope, many more teachers would, and many more students would really enjoy using it, because this is really like your invention, your idea, right? Like you came up with a way of, how you represented critical hope through this expendable little cute dinosaurs, and it was both, fun and so educational. So I'm sure that the audience has many questions and many people want to talk to you right now. So if you are in the audience and are not on the screen, please make sure you remember to use Q&A, and I see already questions popping up in Q&A, so please type your question, and I will read it out loud. And yes, so let's start with the questions from the audience. So yes, the sponge animals, there are also great comments. Yeah, the sponge animals are such a creative idea. And then Julie Latta is writing you, hello, Hannah, your work is really commendable and something new I want to know about what GPY, and it will be really helpful if you elaborate hope. What is hope? So yeah, thank you, Julie, for your question. So I would again read it because it's a big question. So I'll read it one more time. Your work is commendable and something new I want to know about what it actually says GYP, but I think it's GPY probably. So we need to clarify this. And also it would be really helpful if you could elaborate hope. What is hope?
Okay, so GPY, I believe you're talking about the classes, that's geography. So those are Geography 101 and 112, I believe, that MCC adopted in the fall, right, Elena?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then for hope, I'm guessing you're asking about critical hope. I can expand on that if you'd like. So I learned about it first in Dr. Williams' class in the context of climate change. It's just when we think about climate change, we always say that we hope that it's going to get better. And we hope that, the climate or the air temperature won't rise as much. And we hope this, we hope that. So the idea of critical hope is adding action to that hope. And there's so many studies on it and there's so many different stories on it. But my main takeaway from it is that you have to understand that there are going to be challenges, there are going to be things that get in the way of attaining your hope, but you also take that understanding and fuel it towards action and being a part of whatever part that you can be. So that's another concept that I talk to the kids a lot about, is that climate change is a big issue and it's not something that one person can take on, but you can do your part and you can do a little bit and you can inch away at it. And so the idea of critical hope is that we all have a part and we can all work towards that hope, whatever your hope is. It can be climate change, it can be anything, but it's actionable, it's tangible, it's putting in the work rather than just an idea. Does that answer the question?
Thank you so much. I think this is a great reminder to all of us. Yes. And Julie is saying yes, and she's thanking you for your explanation. I want to quickly to piggyback on so the GPY, right? So like for those of you who are not familiar with Grand Valley, so GPY is actually the prefix for all of our courses from geography, and so it stands for Geography and Sustainable Planning. I know it's not obvious, but it's geography and planning. And so we have been having these two courses at Grand Valley that I created years ago, GPY 101, Sustainability and Place, and then GPY 112, Global Climate Crisis. And Hannah, I believe you were in those classes, right? Or maybe no? No. Anyway,
I
those
haven't taken them yet.
those online one credit courses, and they're very, very popular, and they're really kind of geared to all majors, not geography majors necessarily, although geography majors also enjoy those courses, but these courses are really for anyone who wants to know more about sustainability, and for anyone who wants to know more about global climate crisis. And so in Sustainability and Place, students are focusing on tangible solutions, studying examples and case studies of sustainable solutions anywhere around the world. So essentially, they focus on one solution, let it be in energy sustainability or food sustainability or infrastructure sustainability, and they explore it, and they develop a project, and they give a presentation. They also learn through discussions, through readings, and we use Project Drawdown. We use some other books and resources in this class. And then Global Climate Crisis, GPY 112, is of course focusing on climate crisis, but also it has that element of critical hope, because it's very much about what we can do about crisis, and students learn about the impacts of climate change and vulnerability to climate change, but especially about solutions and how to engage in the climate action. And I have been teaching this course now for a number of years, basing it on the trainings developed by former President Al Gore and his book, Truth to Power. So students also are learning how to engage and develop meaningful action to address climate crisis. So as we were working with Muskegon Community College, we had this collaborative group of faculty and students from MCC and GVSU. And so now we're very, very happy to see that MCC has its own versions. They have different numbers and prefixes, but this course is now available at MCC. So for students for whom it's more convenient to take it at Muskegon Community College rather than Grand Valley, they can take it there. High school students in the Muskegon area can take it as a dual enrollment class, and then they can just use it for their own learning, or they can transfer it to Grand Valley. So sorry kind of for jumping in, but I thought that would be useful for people to know why we did it. We have many more questions for you. So another question from Kat. What climate related words did you teach the third grade students? And I would right away go to her second question. When was sustainable planning added? Oh, maybe we'll take this question later because it's an unrelated question. So thank you, Kat. And I will check your second question after that. So what climate words did you use?
I talked to the kids about the difference between weather and climate. That was my first thing, is I didn't want to tell them, oh, the climate's changing, and then it rains one day and it's sunny the next day, and they freak out and say climate's changing, the world's going to end. So I taught them the difference between climate and weather and how the overall shift. And then I also taught them about the rising temperatures, and then just about the change of weather, how it might be more extreme than normal. And I believe that was it for the climate change aspect. I didn't want to lay too much on them as third graders.
Yeah, this is great. Yes, thank you. Okay, I will take a few more questions. So, okay, I'll go back to Kat, and she's asking, when was sustainable planning added to the title of geography department? It's not from the start, but that was many years ago. I would say probably about 10 years ago. But to be honest, I don't remember anymore. But that's a great question. So sustainable, yes, geography and sustainable planning. Well, if you have any more questions, please send them our way. Otherwise, I just want to thank Hannah one more time. This is a great presentation. I see another comment from yes, more comments. Thank you. It was really nice. So you have many positive comments also
Thank you,
coming
everyone.
out in the Q&A. So I also want to join our audience for thanking you for this really outstanding presentation. And so I kind of wanted to share with our audience and brag a little bit on your behalf that this lesson plan has been selected. Also, we submitted it to Michigan Climate Hub. And if you are not familiar with this resource, please definitely check it out. So Michigan Climate Hub is a part of Subject to Climate, and it's a national platform for teaching climate change in K-12 in schools. And so Michigan is one of 8 states in the United States who is participating in this initiative, and Michigan Climate Hub is one of these 8 centers of Subject to Climate. And so I'm very proud of Hannah's work because it has been selected as one of their featured lessons. And so we are now preparing it, preparing adequate formatting, but they're just absolutely thrilled to use it. So all teachers in Michigan could potentially adopt Hannah's lesson for teaching their third grade students or other elementary school students about climate change. So this is really fantastic. So Hannah, thank you very much. Great work. And I know that you are going to stay with us because we have the next presentation coming at 11 o'clock, where you are co-presenting with Kamaya and Maya your project on impact of climate change on cocoa production in West Africa. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of time to transition. Once again, big round of applause. And I will pause recording. So I'm going to pause recording for a few minutes so that you could set up and transition to the next presentation. So in a couple of minutes, we are going to transition to the next presentation by Maya Bahis, Kamaya Boone, Emily Felde, and Hannah Weller. And this is a very exciting project about climate change's impact on cocoa production in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. And again, I had a pleasure working with the students as the faculty mentor as this project is emerging from my ANS GPY for 12. And once again, sorry for so many abbreviations. So ANS stands for Environmental and Sustainability Studies, and JPY stands for Geography and Sustainable Planning. And this is a dual course that is a part of both environmental studies and geography majors. So we will start exactly in 1 minute, and I think our speakers are here by now. So Maya, Kamaya, Emily, we hope to see you in 30 seconds. And do you think they're using the panelist links?
I think
I
we're all
can see
here.
they're here?
Mhm.
Okay, excellent. So we are just going to change, I guess, the settings to make sure that we can see all. All right. Well, thank you all speakers for being here. So we'll start by just calling you to introduce. Please introduce yourself. It'll be difficult for me to introduce the entire group. But once again, this is a project that is emerging from ANS GPY for 12. If you have just joined us in the audience, we will hold all questions to the end of the presentation. Please send your questions, but you can type your questions anytime in the Q&A that you should see in the menu. So Hannah, Maya, Emily, Kamaya, please introduce yourself, and the screen is yours.
I can start.
Oh, you can start.
Okay. Sorry if you're tired of me talking. Again, for those of you who just joined, my name is Hannah Weller. It's my second year at Grand Valley. I'm an environmental and sustainability studies major with environmental science and business minor.
My name is Maya Bages. I'm a third year at Grand Valley, and I'm an environmental science major with a geology minor.
My name's Emily Feldy. I am a junior. My major is in chemistry, and I have 2 minors, environmental sustainability and environmental science. I wonder if Kamaya's isn't working.
Kamaya, is your screen working for you, or is it frozen? It looks like Kamaya is having minor technical issues. I will introduce Kamaya. She is a part of this class. She is a part of environmental studies. She is a co-author on this project, and I think she is right now trying to come back on screen. Meanwhile, I'm going to slightly change the settings, so we'll see only one person at a time as you speak, and we will start with the presentation. And I just hope that Kamaya just jump in back in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I just got a message from her. She said her computer shut down.
What would you prefer? Would you like to start and kind of cover right now that space, or would you like to give her a couple of minutes to restart her computer? That's entirely up to you guys. It depends on what's the order.
It's our second speaker.
She's probably on the phone, right? Because I see her here. She is on the screen. It's just that it looks she's having some technical issues. Oh, she's back. She's back. Excellent. Okay, wonderful. Well, we can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. So obviously our project's called Climate Change's Impact on Cocoa Production in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. As I stated earlier, my name is Emily. This class is a research project, and so far our team has completed our project proposal, and we're currently working on our final research and analysis, so I would just like to make a note of that. Our project focuses on climate change, on how climate change is affecting cocoa production in West Africa, and why it matters not just locally, but globally as well. To give you a quick overview of what we'll be covering, our presentation is structured into several key sections. We'll start with the abstract and our introduction, and then we'll be moving on to our research question and our hypothesis, and this will be followed by our methodology, and then finally our expected results. For today, I'll be focusing on the first portion of the project before passing it on. So to begin our abstract, cocoa production is extremely important because it supports millions of smallholder farmers in the entire global chocolate industry. However, climate change is becoming a major threat, especially in the West African region, which are the two of the world's leadest producers, which is Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. Rising temperatures, increased drought, and changes in rainfall patterns are already starting to reduce crop yields. This has several impacts: loss of incomes for farmers, global cocoa prices are rising, and they're just increasing concerns about food insecurity and environmental justice. Overall, our research highlights that climate change is not just an environmental issue, it's also a social one and also an economic problem. And it affects vulnerable farming communities. Building off of that, our introduction ultimately focus on why this issue is so significant. Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana are two of the largest cocoa producers in the world, as I said, and their economies rely very heavily on these exports. For an example, cocoa makes up about 40% of Cote d'Ivoire's and about 15% of Ghana's export revenue. Because of this, any disruption to cocoa production has major economic consequences. Right now, these regions are experiencing higher temperatures, irregular rainfall patterns, longer dry seasons, and an increased plant disease. All of these factors are causing cocoa crops to fail or rot, which reduces overall production overall. What's especially important is that smallholder farmers contribute very little to global greenhouse gas emissions, yet they're the ones that are experiencing the most severe impacts. This connects directly to the concept of environmental injustice, which is a key theme in our research.
Again, I wanted to apologize for my technical issues, but with all of our research interests, we came up with a pretty good research question, which reads, how does climate change influence cocoa production in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, and what are the resulting impacts on local livelihoods, global markets, food insecurity, and environmental justice? And continuing off of that, our next slide talks about our hypothesis and objectives. First, I'll talk about our hypothesis. Our hypothesis leads more into the economic effects that cocoa production has on West Africa, specifically in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, and how these effects are not only diminishing the ability to produce cocoa, but chocolate overall and eventually worldwide, and also the ones that are also farming the cocoa plant as well. Adding on to that, in many of the studies we've looked at, we've observed subsections talking about food security in West Africa, as well as environmental injustice that takes place. And we just want to address that a little bit more and connect that to climate change. Moving on to our objectives for this study, just to clarify, we are focusing on the current and future impacts of climate change and the climate change that will have and has on the physical process of cocoa production. In order to complete our objectives, we followed steps we've outlined for ourselves, such as gathering information from similar readings, doing our own research, and gathering even more information from studies on the social and economic impacts that have experienced from the global and local level. And then predicting the possible worst case scenario towards climate change that would look like for Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana for their cocoa production. And finally, being able to show what we found dealing with food insecurity and environmental injustice that result in the negative effects that climate change has on agriculturally dependent farmers. Then we're going to jump into our methodology. First, we are going to talk about how we conducted our research using peer-reviewed articles to create the foundation for our project, how we analyze online climate and agriculture bases, such as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the Food and Agricultural Organization Statistical Database for more measured research. And lastly, our outreach towards climate change and cocoa production experts for more answers to our more dire questions.
For the methodology portion of our bibliographic research, we collected peer-reviewed literature through Grand Valley's online library database, and we filtered that search to focus more on cocoa production and climate change in Ghana. And we found many peer-reviewed articles that helped answer our question of climate change impacting cocoa production in Ghana. And for example, many studies showed a theme of higher temperatures having a greater impact on cocoa yield than just shifting precipitation patterns alone. And these providing us with many different sources helps us gather more information on our background information on our topic and a large variety of different approaches. And for our climate shift findings, we found that the rising temperatures and increasing rainfall are the key factors in agricultural threats in West Africa, and climate projections showed continued warming across the region, as well as higher temperatures and inconsistent rainfall, and is an ongoing issue as climate models predict a reduction in the suitability of cocoa growing regions in Ghana by mid-century or 2050. And moving on to our non-physical impacts, the cocoa industry in Ghana is mostly made up of smallholder farms who rely heavily on income from their crop yields. And this creates a vulnerability when climate change threatens that region, as they rely solely on their smallholder farms. And local environmental justice concerns, because of the disproportionate effects of smallholder farms' contributions to greenhouse gases as opposed to the threats against their livelihoods from crop production due to climate change. And moving on to global impacts, studies show that not only does this affect global supply chains and raising prices on an international scale, but it shows issues of food insecurity and environmental justice as with the smallholder farms. And in addition, it puts global supply chains off balance and contributes to the rising prices of cocoa internationally.
The next part of our methodology was data collection. So we had two methods. This is more of our quantitative data and where we are doing the work collecting it. And as we are undergrad researchers and in a class, we cannot just go to West Africa and collect it ourselves. So we relied on two online databases. So the first is, as Kamaya mentioned, is the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and this interactive atlas. We actually did a lab on it in our class, and you're able to pick out specific areas. So we were able to choose our study area of West Africa, and it shows climate projections and historical climate trends, and you can shift it for different rising temperatures, and you can look at the temperature increases, the changes in precipitation patterns, drought frequency, and that's very helpful for us because it backs our hypothesis, because we do not know what will happen in the future, but we can use this data and show that our hypothesis that it's going to increase lines up with this data that we've collected. And then also the FAO stat, which is the Food and Agriculture Organization Corporate Statistical Database. And this has agricultural trends from 1961 to the most recent year available. So we are again able to choose out Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, and you can actually choose a specific crop that you want to analyze. So for us, it was the cocoa beans, and it can give you nutritional information as well, and also the affordability of healthy diets in those areas, and just the cropland nutrient balance, which is really cool to be able to do from such a far distance. We don't have to do the data collection ourselves, where we can just access it through this database. And then, yeah, we are going to look at the cocoa yields over time and the projections for that, and look in the past 10 years, 20 years, and make different graphs out of that to back up our hypothesis. The third methodology we had was contacting experts. So we chose experts based on their specialization in our topic. Many of them are co-authors of our project or of our bibliographic research. So we contacted 7 of them. 6 of them are co-authors on our articles. So we were able to just look at those articles and then click on the one that's the contact for their research. And it was really nice to be able to have that opportunity through the Grand Valley's library. And they were all contacted through email, and we received 2.5 responses. So we were able to get into contact with John and have conversation with him about it, about our topic. And we sent him a list of questions, and he responded to all of them, which was very nice and is very helpful where we're at. And we're going to be able to use that in our final research paper. And then we got a response from, and he pointed us to more articles and more information to further look into the topic. And then we're in the process of talking with Peter and getting questions out to him. So we've gotten a first response, but we have not moved on since then. But this part was a requirement on our project, and I'm really grateful for it because it allows us to learn more personally about the topic. And also, I think it would be cool as an expert to show that there are students who are interested in their research and are using it to benefit their work. And then our expected results, as Emily said, we're in between the proposal and the actual research. So we have expected results, and some of these we are hitting so far. So the anticipated findings we have is that rising temperatures and drought reduce cocoa yields, and there's going to be a decline in the suitable growing regions. And then that leads into the social impacts, which increase vulnerability for smallholder farming or farmers because they are already vulnerable. Climate change is only going to exacerbate that. And there's just the environmental justice concerns because they don't contribute as much to global greenhouse gases, but they are the ones getting hit the hardest when there's climate change as a result of the greenhouse gases. And then that leads to food insecurity, which is something we really want to prove in our research, that all of these connecting parts of the cocoa industry are leading to food insecurity issues for these smallholder farmers. And then we also expect to see the global impacts of reduced cocoa supply, rising global prices, and the economic ripple effect that the cocoa bean industry in West Africa is going to affect the greater cocoa world, and then eventually hit us as consumers with chocolate. And then one day Hershey bars are going to be $5 and we're going to be freaking out. So that's the goal of our project. Thank you. And are there any questions?
Wow, what a great project. I am just so impressed both by the quality of the content of your project and methodology, but also how well you have prepared and staged this presentation and wonderful cohesion among all the speakers. So I'm just going to rearrange the windows on the screen so that the audience could see you all at the same time. And once again, if you are in the audience and you have any questions for the speakers, please send it our way through the Q&A, and I would read it out loud. Meanwhile, while you are typing all the questions, and I see that some questions are already popping up, I just wanted to ask you about how did you come up with this idea? What inspired you to do this research? Why you decided to focus on cocoa? Why did you decide to focus on West Africa? What motivated you in this project?
I'll take this question if it's all right. This kind of came from my idea, and then they were interested and reached out to me. So I was in a class last semester, and my professor mentioned that the chocolate industry was being impacted by climate change. And as someone who really enjoys chocolate, I was like, oh, this is the first time I've ever heard of this. What the heck? So then I looked into it, and I looked into the regions that are most heavily affected. And that's when I realized that, yes, as a consumer, I'm concerned about the chocolate, but also there's greater impacts, environmental justice concerns, food insecurity with these smallholder farmers. So then it puts you into perspective, like chocolate's not just the main issue. People's lives and livelihoods are at stake. So that's why I came about it. And anyone else can add on to that.
I'll add on to it. My initial focus for going in was specifically to focus on food insecurity because food insecurity is like really, I'm very passionate about that, and I didn't really see um, with the other research questions that people were pursuing, I wasn't really sure what I should, lean towards, especially with my focus on food insecurity. And Hannah, she initially had the question and she was very set on it, and I was, very happy with that because, I think everyone should have a fair ability to be able to have food and just be able, and people growing the food as well, they should have like a more, I'm sorry, I lost my word. Well, everyone should be involved in food because it is our way of living, and I think that's really important. So.
Thank you, Kamaya. This is a great comment, and that's you kind of also already preempting my next question. So where do you see the major solutions and how, where this region should, how this region can become more resilient and less vulnerable to the impacts of climate change? Because I think, as you have correctly pinpointed, we kind of have an overlap of two separate issues. On one hand, it's climate change, and climate change is affecting agriculture, and it's affecting community, it's affecting cocoa production. But cocoa production is for the experts, and so how both trends are going to impact food security in this region. Like, cocoa is a major monoculture, right? But people need food. People also need this land to grow their own food, culture, the appropriate food. So where do you see, possibly competition between the land used for cocoa production for exports and land used for supporting food security of the local communities, and how climate change is likely to affect it and exacerbate those competitions further?
I can talk on that a little for the solutions. I think, well, climate change being disproportionately affecting these smallholder farmers is out of our control. For the most part, we can't stop climate change right now, but what we can do is the environmental justice concerns I've had, and from the research, is involving the people, the smallholder farmers, more in the mitigation and adaptation strategies instead of leaving it to the larger farms and giving them, they have the money, they have the resources where they're able to mitigate and adapt, whereas the smallholder farmers do not have as much. So my solution would be to allow them into more of the conversations about that and help them. I don't know how the funding works in West Africa. That's something I should look into more. But if they were able to have more funding and able to mitigate and adapt, just like the larger farms, that would help with their production and then eventually help with the yields and then circulate back towards the money and help with the food insecurity, because if they're gaining more money, they're able to buy food and have it more accessible. Those are my thoughts.
And I do kind of want to piggyback off of that. I know that funding, and there's another word for it, I can't think of it, but funding, it has to be directed specifically to those smallholder farmers. And I think if there was money being specifically given, and then I think there would be a better chance, considering the distribution of it all. I just think if there was a proper and set way of processing that, then I think that would be better.
May you also have a comment? Yeah? Thank you,
I mean,
Kamaya.
I just agree with the notion that like funding should focus more so on the smaller farms rather than larger because like as we mentioned, a majority of the cocoa production does come from the smallholder farms, and I feel like that will definitely have the greatest impact if there's a reduction in the smaller farms rather than the larger ones.
And there is like ways to help with that. Like there's a agroforestry is like one type of help that can be provided. So if we were providing these smallholder farms with the funds, and if possible, being able to lower prices for shade trees, then this would give a better chance to the cocoa industry because by planting shade trees, you can basically reintroduce that like forest type environment, which will help do a little bit of heat protection and sun damage protection from the climate change that is occurring. And trees are like things like bananas, plantains, I think mango is one. So there's a lot of different options that could help there.
This is great, and agroforestry is really a wonderful way to integrate food security as a climate solution. With this, I kind of want to take your minds a little bit at the global scale of the problem rather than regional, and think about the role of international community responsibility, and especially responsibility of us as consumers of chocolate, right? So like, what can we do in our everyday choices as we think about the disproportional burden of climate change in communities like communities in Cote d'Ivoire, in Ghana? These countries have very, very small carbon impact, almost no impact, right? If you think about climate impact of this region, there is essentially no, the carbon footprint is very, very low, minimal contribution. While we think about the global north versus global south, all carbon emissions are really coming from the global north, from developed, from industrialized countries. And by the way, we are also consumers of chocolate, right? So we are polluting the atmosphere, but we are also eating the chocolate. So there is this huge disparity at the global north, global south scale. And that's really at the heart of the problem, both of the problem of climate change and the problem of food insecurity in the global south. Any thoughts about what can be done about it? I know it's a huge question, might be beyond just one project, but what are your thoughts about those disparities and possible solutions, especially thinking of ourselves as chocolate consumers?
I am a little unsure on that. My thoughts would be to support as much as you can looking into where the chocolate is coming from, and hopefully you can find, a chocolate bar that you enjoy that's also the money is going back to its original source. I honestly don't know. I should do some more research on that. I don't know if there are brands and that specifically go back to West Africa, and it's because most of it is just harvested and not produced there. So I'm unsure of that, but as much as you can, just with climate change, we are in the global north, so we are the ones emitting the most. So if you can just reduce your carbon footprint as much as you can, that's going to indirectly impact West Africa.
And to piggyback kind of off that, I mean, as much as I love consuming chocolate, I do think that the global north could like kind of balance that disparity. We could produce less chocolate and I don't know, because it just doesn't really seem fair.
Thank you. I'll take one question from the audience as we start running out of time. So there's a great question. Did you find anything unexpected in your research?
I was unaware of all the different disease in the cocoa beans. When I was going into it, I was originally just thinking about, the growing process with the temperatures and the water and the soil of those. But we had talked to John and had given him a list of questions and had asked him if there's anything that he thought that was most or needed more research or more attention. And he actually said something about the disease and the pesticides used. And I thought that was really interesting because that's something that I was not anticipating being an issue with cocoa beans.
It's not necessarily unexpected, but I I I did my own kind of little study, well, not study, research. It was small, but it's more of cocoa beans being more integrated with other seeds and they grow like much healthier and better. And I just thought it was very surprising that most people don't do that specifically because focusing on cocoa would be more of their goal rather than any other plant. So I just thought that was very interesting.
Something that really surprised me was the fact that while cocoa farming is a victim of climate change, it's also a major contributor to it. Um, because of the issues that they're having, that they're causing more deforestation to occur because they're getting rid of more and more trees to have more land to plant these cocoa trees. And then when the soil's not working anymore and that area's not working, then they just keep going further and further. And that's not something that is, I guess, necessarily thought about, and at least that I didn't think about. So I was surprised to read about it.
Any concluding thoughts? Otherwise, thank you so much. We need to transition to the next group of presenters. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you for the excellent presentation, for excellent discussion, great answers, and I will see you in class next week. And meanwhile, I'm just going to ask you to unshare your screen, and we are going to now make space for our next project. And this is Impacts of Climate Change on Wildfires in Western United States by Connor Rugg, Augustus Triple, and Evan Olson. And I think they are already here. So you can just leave the webinar right now and you're welcome to watch it. And I see that our speakers are already here. So Evan is here, and Augustus, Connor. So I see that you are sharing the screen, so this is even better. So you can unmute yourself anytime and you can start sharing your screen. And it looks like you're already sharing your screen, so everything looks great. Whenever you are ready, please do introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, how you came up with the idea of this project, and then whenever you're ready, you are very welcome to start. So thank you for being here on time.
Yep.
Are we still muted?
No, we're not
Okay.
muted yet. Oh. We're trying to get into presentation mode real quick.
And I can see your screen, so whenever you just click on the first slide, everything looks excellent. We all can see your screen. And I just wanted again to remind the audience, if you are in the audience, you can send the questions to the speakers anytime through the Q&A, and we will take them at the end, and we are ready to start.
All right, so you want to...
Yeah. I'm Augustus Ripple. I'm currently a junior right now, pursuing a degree in wildlife biology and a minor in environmental and sustainability studies.
I'm Evan Olson. I'm a junior as well. My major is environmental sustainability studies, and I'm minoring in business.
And then Connor cannot be here with us today, but he's pursuing a degree in natural resource management.
Yeah.
Okay, so our abstract today, oh my bad, is in this paper, we are looking to investigate the impacts of climate change on wildfires in California, and in turn, its impact on the economy. We know climate change is affecting California, has caused the increased prevalence and severity of wildfires in this region. Climate change creates dry conditions, warmer temperatures, and prolonged droughts, perfect conditions for wildfires. These wildfires then add pollutants to the air in forms of carbonaceous aerosols, carbon dioxide, and other greenhouse gases. This worsens climate change, further warming our planet. Wildfires do a considerable amount of damage to the U.S. economy by destroying homes, businesses, infrastructure, natural resources, and costing billions in public health issues. We will investigate this feedback loop and its effects on the U.S. economy, along with providing propositions on how the U.S. can mitigate economic damage, climate change, and the frequency of rampant wildfires. The information and data found in this research comes from scholarly peer-reviewed journals, articles, extensive institutional data, and financial reports, and climate modeling data from the IPCC Interactive Atlas. And then some of the keywords are climate change, economy, California, and wildfire.
So our research question hypothesis. So the research question we're basing this whole paper on is, how can we address the growing economic concerns brought upon by the increasing rate of wildfires in California? And is it fiscally responsible to burden the expense of the damages, or would it make more sense financially to address the root cause of the increase in wildfires? We hypothesize that by cutting greenhouse gas emissions and slowing the rate of climate change, the rate of wildfires will slow, as will their destruction and economic impact on our government. The United States will see a return on investment, specifically California will see a return on investment when they spend money to slow climate change and reduce emissions. So as we said earlier, our methods are we looked at scholarly peer-reviewed journal articles. We used the IPCC Interactive Atlas model. We looked at financial reports concerning the cost of wildfires and the current climate investments that are in California. And then we also had email interviews with experts in the field of climate change and wildfires.
So, climate change's influence on wildfires. So, the relationship between climate change and wildfire, especially in the context of California, would be considered a positive feedback loop. Greater amounts of greenhouse gases being emitted into the atmosphere lead to hotter air temperatures, and then hotter air temperatures lead to prolonged wildfire seasons, allowing fuel for these wildfires to become drier. And then landscapes with drier fuel and longer lasting wildfire seasons cause wildfires to occur more often and with greater intensity. And then wildfires release even more greenhouse gases, perpetuating the positive feedback loop. And then the ecological impacts of wildfires in California. So landscape changes include increased frequency of mudslides, decimation of the vegetation on the landscape, and then atmospheric changes include carbonaceous aerosol production, and then CO2 releases into the atmosphere. And then, should I elaborate on that now?
Yeah, you can.
So then also another important factor to consider is when the local vegetation gets decimated on a landscape, especially in California, say a wildfire, that allows invasive species to come in sometimes, and then they will grow on that landscape, and often they're not adapted to fire, so that can make the area even more prone to fire because, say, like an invasive grass species takes over a prairie, they're not adapted to that fire, and they'll even burn quicker. And then historical climate change trends in California. California's temperatures have been going up on average, and then also climate change has caused less snowpack and more varied precipitation. Droughts become more frequent and intensified, increased wildfire intensity and occurrences. And then note that wildfires are a natural occurrence among the California landscape, but the frequency and severity is not. And then you can also see in our chart how the temperatures have been gradually going up, and then the different models of lower and higher emissions.
So we use the IPCC Interactive Atlas to look at the future outlook in different situations that could happen. So warming of 2 degrees in mean temperature change and warming of 3 degrees. And both of these show the impacts that it can have on California as a region. And yeah, just how climate change is getting a lot worse very, very fast. And so going into the economic cost of wildfires in California, over the period of 2017 to 2021, the estimated average annual losses totaled over $117.4 billion. Also using the Environmental Protection Agency's value of a statistical life, roughly 10.8 million in 2022, wildfire fatalities impose an additional 386 million in losses annually. Wildfire intensity, though variable from year to year, has generally increased over time, and researchers expect this trend will continue as the state grows hotter and drier because of climate change. So this shows that in only a period of 4 years, there has been over $117.4 billion in direct losses in California. And that's just California alone. So one can assume that from 2021 to now and before 2017, those losses were also very, very high. And the graph below shows direct losses from wildfires and some categories for losses. And it says, and this is for every year. It would be 11 billion. But this also does not take into account maybe like healthcare, like health conditions that can happen because of severe wildfires. It doesn't take into account maybe like destruction to ecological places or ecosystems or natural resources. So, and then we go to the current climate investments in California. So a organization called California Climate Investments have put a considerable amount of money into combating climate change, 12.8 billion in implemented projects, and I believe like 9 billion of that is to help is more focused towards maybe people that can be more affected by climate change, so like lower income, marginalized groups. These projects involve many sectors, including transportation, so clean transportation, housing, energy, clean energy, agriculture, natural and working lands, and all these contribute significantly to the state's climate, environmental, public health, economic, and equity goals. And 33 billion in investments have come from cap and trade proceeds since 2006, cutting carbon pollution equivalent to taking 1.3 million gas-powered cars off the road. So cap and trade is just a little background information on cap and trade. It is it's a system of, it's almost like an incentive for companies to stay below a certain threshold of carbon emissions, and they can get and they can trade and buy allowances, and so that gets money towards a fund to then invest in climate change. And California has been revolutionary, especially in the United States. They're leading in this. And there are other states that are involved, but California by far has the most invested in climate change. And I mean, it's comparable to most countries. Um, and yeah, and then so yeah, California's at the cutting edge of climate progress and overall investments. So discussion, how do we make, or does it make sense financially to address the root cause of the increase in wildfires? So as we said earlier, wildfires are naturally occurring events and can have positive impacts on many ecosystems, but climate change has increased the frequency and severity of wildfires in California, which can do a lot more damage than it does good. And in a small sector, just 4 years, wildfires alone cost $117.4 billion of damages total in California, while California climate change investments total around 33 billion since 2006. So since 2006, only 33 billion has been invested. Yet in a 4-year period, wildfires, which is only one aspect that climate change has, like one negative impact that it has that alone has cost 117.4 billion. So when looking at financials, climate change, the root cause of all these, of the increased frequency and severity of wildfires in California is not being addressed in correspondence with the damage it causes. And we need more funds to go towards preventative climate change initiatives to lessen the need for reactionary spending afterwards.
So, our discussion, how can we address the growing economic concerns brought upon by the increasing rates of wildfire? So, investing in more climate change initiatives, bring back trust in science and the government. We all know there's been campaigns against climate change and the science behind it, and we have to figure out ways to build trust with the public, the government, and the agencies that are combating climate change. Um, Stop development in fire-prone areas. We should fundamentally change society's expectation of fire management and not protect homes in fire-prone areas. Jude Baham, he's a professor at Colorado State, and he's the author of The Economics of Wildfire in the United States. We reached out to him via email, and we had a email interview with him, and he gave us some insight on this topic. But then increase fire mitigation techniques in the forest/property management, and then encourage advancements in technology and academia. And then how do we make progress happen? So pushing climate change legislation forward at the state and federal levels. We need an increase in funding for climate projects and sustainable practices. Companies who practice sustainability can get subsidies as an incentive, organized activism from younger generations, federalize the cap and trade program, and then reintroduce native species that are adapted to wildfires, especially right after they've been affected by fire.
All right, so that's the end of our presentation. So if there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. What a great presentation. And I especially appreciate that you are really looking at the root causes of the problem, and you're also exploring many different solutions. So for our audience, I just want to remind that if you have any questions, please send them to Evan and Augustus through the Q&A, and I will read your question out loud. Meanwhile, as you are typing your questions or thinking about your questions, I have a few questions for you. And of course, it was such a great pleasure. I want to just start by thanking you, because it was such a great pleasure to work with your team in this class. And, you have been very active in SGPY for 12, and this is an excellent project. I think it's a very inspiring project. But I wanted to know, how you came up with this idea, right? You had this option to write a project proposal and investigate different impacts of climate change. Look, how what motivated you? What inspired you to focus on wildfires, and how did you decide to work on California?
So I was born and raised in Arizona, so like I've seen wildfires firsthand in Arizona and New Mexico, and so I understand how it can impact our climate and how it can like affect different areas throughout the out west. But also part of the reason we chose California is at first we were going to do like the southwestern like United States region, but that was kind of too vague for our project. And another part that inspired it is in 2025, I think we all know there was LA wildfires, and that was the number one most costly natural disaster in the United States of 2025. And I forgot how much it was, but I believe it was over like $50 billion. Almost half of that statistic we had that was like $113 billion over 4 years. So like obviously that kind of shows how big of an issue this can be. And then also we kind of just wanted to know how climate change plays into wildfires.
Yeah, so I had a job this summer where I worked like in the field, like field work out in nature preserves, and I knew a couple people who were they were like firefighters who could like they're on call basically firefighter or wildfire um fighters, and a couple of them had to go out during the summer to Colorado and to Wyoming to go fight fires. So it was interesting hearing about their, story and the training that goes into it and everything, and that's why I was interested in doing wildfires for this project.
Thank you. Yes, I totally understand because it's such an important topic. It's also very important now in Michigan, right? Because every year, every summer, we're becoming more and more affected by wildfires, even when they're happening like outside of the state, or sometimes smaller scale wildfires are happening here. But last year, obviously, we were very much affected just by the smoke from the wildfires from Alberta. So my second question for you is, like, where do you see the balance of climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation? You have really went to the root of the problem, and I strongly agree with you that treating the disease is just so much more efficient and comprehensive and cost-effective rather than just treating symptoms. But we know that there are two approaches, like into any disease or any major environmental issue, and it's both climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. So where do you see the balance, and especially because you're looking at it from the financial perspective? Adaptation is much more expensive, but it looks like we would still need climate change adaptation, right? Because fires are already happening, and they're happening every summer now. But on the other hand, you're absolutely right. No matter how much we adapt and no much how much, billions of dollars are now spent on adaptation, but it doesn't really address the root of the problem, and the root of the problem is climate change. So where do you see this balance between this short-term and maybe long-term also adaptation priorities that are essential to save people's lives, but also how we can do better in terms of mitigating climate change, which is really the true problem?
So I see the line as being, I would say like 70-30. We need to just stop climate. Like we need to like slow down the rate of climate change because that's the main issue here. The reintroduction of like native species and other type of adaptation, like can happen and it should happen, but we're gonna see these fires get worse and worse every year, and we need to stop. We need to stop the root causes of it. That's what we need to address is the root cause. Adapting to it is important, and that can be done as well, but it should not be done at the rate or with the amount of funding that just stopping the root cause would be funded at. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing like I learned from this project is we like in regards to fire, we need to be more proactive versus reactive because it seems like a lot of the fire strategy out west is very reactive instead of putting in measures to either prevent or mitigate fire. Because you got to understand like there's just giant regions in California that fire is going to happen no matter what. It's just part of the landscape. The plants have adapted around it. Like there's pine trees that use fire to open up the seeds in their cones, and that's just part of the area. So I think it sounded like through the email interview, what Jude was getting at, or Professor Bam, was like if you're going to live in certain areas, you kind of have to expect that there's a high chance your property might get destroyed.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just like the risk of living there, just like how in certain parts of California, like in LA, there's people who live close to those mountain ranges that experience earthquakes and other types of natural disasters where even some insurance companies don't want to insure the houses and property in that area because it's just such a risk to those types of natural disasters. So I would say if they want to prevent some stuff like that, it's going to take some serious sacrifices. At the very low end of it, just planting native species to the area just to prevent wildfires from getting as out of control as possible. But part of it also might be conserve finding ways to conserve water resources and stuff like that, because it's just like like in Arizona, there's not enough water for everyone to have a green lawn, and that could also apply to California and other places like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are very, very valid points. And I was wondering, in the sense, where do you see solutions related to land use planning and urban planning? Because as you said, we see lots of development, especially in Southern California, in the areas that have been prone to fire just because of the nature of the landscape, the nature of the climate, the nature of vegetation. And now we see this huge encroachment of urban sprawl into those areas that are already very combustive. And now they're becoming even much more combustive because we have invasive species, we have construction areas, we have much higher density of the population and much higher temperatures as a result of climate change. So it's kind of all creates this perfect storm. So what kind of other solutions that, like we could potentially use? And kind of the second question feeding back on this, like people historically, the first people who have been living there before the settlers came, before the European agricultural methods were brought to this area, indigenous people have been living in this landscape, with a fire for thousands of years. And they were doing cultural burns essentially to remove all this flammable substrate. So the fire was a tool for preventing fire, right? That it was better to have, this very highly precision tool that the fire essentially was for managing the landscape, as opposed to those uncontrollable wildfires that we have today. But now we are living, in the environment where, the density of the population is so much higher. So what are your thoughts both on, like, would it be possible to bring the fire as a tool for fire management, and also how we can improve the land use to prevent some of those uncontrollable fires?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want me to, or I can go?
Oh, you go.
Yeah. So I think it goes back to just having to sacrifice some things. So basically, like your house doesn't get burned down. I've heard from people in wildlife biology and NRM how they have to be very careful when they do prescribed burns in areas, because not always, because sometimes there's days where it's just dangerous to do so because the fire could grow out of control, but also because someone will do a prescribed burn at a park, and then they get like 15 phone calls from people around them in the township or wherever, where they're just complaining like, why is it so smoky out? You're ruining the air quality and all this. But if they don't do that, that will eventually leave a bunch of fuel for the fire around, and then it will, it could lead to a greater, more severe fire. But then also, I think another issue is like, people don't want to like live with the land. They just want to live there and not adapt. And that's part of the issue, is when you have something that you like fire, which you can't always control. People want to live in the most controlled position possible, but that's just not the case with something like fire or a natural disaster.
I think it becomes a case of like making sure people are aware and they like have the knowledge. So if they're in a fire-prone area, they should know that with the increase in severity and frequency of wildfires, that they're in danger like constantly. Like it's especially during wildfire season, that's something that they need to be aware of, and to then they're choosing to live in those areas anyway. That's something that's that's a problem that they have to deal with. And it's I know places that I know there's insurance companies that don't insure in those areas. I know there's I know that we just need to stop developing in those really fire prone areas because those are the ones that are if they were already fire prone, 100 years ago, they're even insanely more now. So it's important to like avoid those places, stop developing there, and then if people are there to like explain to them like the severity, explain to them the danger they're in. Yeah.
I also have one more, and it's also more in-depth land management plans. After a fire, restoring the land is really important, and oftentimes nature will end up doing it itself, but making sure invasive species don't come there. But also a lot of times you'll see organizations like uniformly plant trees after a fire, but in nature trees aren't planted uniformly, and they're also not the same age in a healthy forest, and you see people plant trees at the same age and the same like distance between all of them, and that too can sometimes make an area even more fire prone because if a fire hits at 20 years later, you have a bunch of trees that are only like medium grown and they're all the same age and distribution, and it can just actually make it worse sometimes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was a great presentation, also wonderful discussion. Thank you very much for answering questions in so much detail. And I was also very impressed by your work with the experts. So this is like more half question, how you have been so successful reaching out to different experts, and what is your advice to other students who are right now kind of navigating those interviews with experts?
What I found, because I reached out to Jude, and because I had read his paper, and it was about the economics of wildfires in the United States, and it was really helpful, especially in the sense that we're like focusing on economics, and he was the main author of it, and there's like an email that's in like the paper, right, on whatever website it was on. I ended up just looking up his name and finding his school email because he works in academia still, and I found him at Colorado State. I don't know what I think he's in like resource management is what he teaches. He's a professor there. And so I reached out to his school email and he was able to he got back to me very, very quickly. So I think just like if you're reaching out to an expert, I wouldn't do like LinkedIn. I would find something like a personal or like a school email, like they're like and I like address them, personally in that way. And when I addressed him, I just had like 3 or 4 questions that I wanted, him to elaborate on that maybe I took from the paper, questions I had about the paper, or questions I had about like our project and stuff. And so he was able to give us some good information. So yeah.
This is excellent advice. And again, thank you very much. Good luck with your, with the rest of the project. And I look forward to your presentation in class next week. And we are ready to transition to our last but not the least presentation. So we will move in just 1 minute to the impact of climate change on the Northwest Passage in the Arctic by Antonia, Sarah, and Eva. And I think they are already here, ready to present. So thank you for being here, and it looks like you are also all together. You chose to be all together on the same screen, so it makes my work much easier, managing multiple screens and speakers. So this is excellent. Whenever you are ready, I'm going to invite you to share your screen, and if you could please introduce yourself and just say a few words about yourself, who you are, and you're doing this project. And of course, this is another capstone project from Environmental Studies and Geography for 12. And it has been absolute delight to work with this team on this project. So the screen is yours.
Do you want to start with introduction?
Yeah, I'm Antonia. I'm Ava.
And I'm Sarah. And this is Climate Change Impact, the Future of Greenland.
Our final presentation for GPY/ENS 412, Global Climate and Environmental Change, with Professor Lubimtseva.
So this is our abstract, just like an overview of the entire project that we've done. Our keywords is indigenous culture, Arctic warming, geopolitics, thermal alien circulation, and environmental conditions.
So as an introduction, our objective is to observe current trends in climate change and how how it is affecting the Inuit people, environment, the geopolitics of Greenland, and we also seek to understand how climate change will continue to affect these three topics.
So our research question is, how will climate change impact the future of Greenland's environment, culture, and geopolitical interests?
And our hypothesis is that accelerated warming from climate change will reshape Greenland's physical environment through the melting of ice and thawing of permafrost, intensifying geopolitical competition over newly accessible areas, and causing significant cultural adaptations for indigenous communities. So our study area is Greenland. It's made up of, it's 836,000 square mile island with 80% of it covered in ice. It is home to the Inuit people who have lived in the region for centuries. The effects of climate change have been witnessed by communities in the regions for decades as the region warms at a rate twice as the rest of the world. Additionally, since 1998, Greenland's ice sheets have experienced net annual mass loss 27 consecutive years in a row.
So Greenland sea ice is said to be an indicator of our changing climate, thus allowing scientists to track environmental changes and forecast changes in the global ecosystem in response.
The polar regions and the loss of sea ice impact ocean currents and regional climate patterns. It influences weather around the world. We draw our conclusions by synthesizing the research in addition to scholarly studies on the communities who live there. We admit that given the current state of geopolitics, we cannot predict the future. However, we do attempt to surmise what the future might look like, considering that beneath the ice and permafrost lie rare earth minerals and other minerals like graphite and zinc.
So here's our methodology. We utilized these sources such as the IPCC Interactive Atlas, ArcProGIS, FAO.org, En-ROADS Climate Interactive, and earthnullschool.net. This was to visualize data and model climate change scenarios in this project.
And then we also had peer-reviewed research that was obtained from the Grand Valley State University Library and from Google Scholar. Sources were used to obtain scholarly research, observations, and predictions of how the environmental changes are impacting the people who live in Greenland, the environment they live in, and the political interests in the region.
So we all reached out to a variety of experts in the field. I did receive a response from Eric Rignat, the Donald Bren Distinguished and Chancellor Professor of Earth System Science at the University of California, Irvine. His response is included in this presentation. So polar regions, especially the Arctic, are experiencing the effect of climate change at a greater magnitude, especially with warming twice that of the rest of the world. The FAO time series data chart leaves little room for question. In 2025, Greenland had an average temperature that was 2 degrees Celsius higher than normal. Okay, in 2025, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released its Atlantic report card, sounding the alarm that, did you?
Oh, sorry, go back.
No.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Sounding the alarm that the Arctic is warming faster than the rest of the planet, noting that its surface air temperature between October of 2024 and September of 2025 were the warmest recorded since 1900. In fact, the last 10 years were the warmest on record. The physical landscape of Greenland is changing. With the loss of its ice pack from its ice sheets, the permafrost is beginning to thaw. Much of the island is covered in continuous permafrost. Beneath the ice sheets and ice pack that cover 80% of the island, I reached out to Eric Rignat, who authored many articles that provide his synthesis of the bathymetric data he and his cohorts collected in Greenland. I asked him what he thought was most important to know about what's going on in the region. He suggested that to understand the impact of melting glaciers, we must understand their connection to the ocean, its temperature, salinity, and ocean currents. The thermohaline currents are the deep ocean currents that move water slowly through changes in its density and temperature. This system is sometimes called the ocean conveyor belt. It is responsible for balancing the entire Earth's climate patterns. Taking a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies, we can easily see that the ocean is much warmer than it should be. Rignat also suggested that I take a look at Story Glacier in Umang. He told me that it is the most studied glacier in the region and provides an example of the glaciers in Western Greenland. Polar regions are considered flagship areas. The most extreme impacts are expected to occur there by 2050. 240 marine terminating glaciers control the mass balance of the ice sheets in Greenland. In bathymetric surveys completed in 2016, Rignat and his team surveyed 14 glacial fjords in Western Greenland. They found that shallow sills were created by advancing glaciers, limiting the access of warm Atlantic waters, whereas the deeper fjords allow for the intrusion of warm Atlantic water, allowing its advancement towards the glaciers. They also noted the presence of warm Atlantic water in their study area, which provided high melt potential. Their survey also found overdeepening from glacial erosion and sea floor depths up to 100 meters deeper than noted on existing charts. In an article discussing the bed topography, Matthew Morleim echoes Rignat's findings, and a year later reported that the glacier had been underrepresented in its contribution to sea level rise by 7 centimeters. Between September 2024 and September 2025, Greenland lost 105 billion metric tons of sea ice. Additionally, during the same period, ice melt in southern Greenland reached farther inland than before. Some areas above sea level, twice as many typical melt days occurred. The duration of the melt season experienced in all of eastern Greenland was above average. Moreover, researchers have found that 11,000 square miles of ice and glaciers have melted away in the last 30 years. Melting sea ice is the second largest contributor of global sea level rise, second only to the thermal expansion of warming ocean water. The IPCC warns that cascading effects of increasing warming of atmospheric and oceanic surface temperatures, it warns of those effects. We have seen how this affects glaciers and sea ice, but what are some of the cascading effects? Both sea surface warming and the loss of sea ice will disrupt species distribution, habitat, food sources, and predation. It will also increase biodiversity and pathogens, decreased freshwater habitat with an increase of warming freshwater and increased runoff, and the further thawing of permafrost. That said, we can say that the future of Greenland's environment looks much different because of climate change.
So the next topic we talked about was Indigenous communities and how they are affected by climate change. Greenlandic Inuit communities make up around 88% of the total population in Greenland, and there are three major groups: the Kalaallit of Western Greenland, the Tanumiit of Eastern Greenland, and the Inuit of Northern Greenland. Indigenous communities are struggling to maintain their culture and lifestyles and have to adapt to changes that are becoming increasingly undeniable. One of the most important parts of their culture is dog sledding. The majority of residents use dog sleds to navigate the ice sheets and get to other areas quicker for seal hunting and fishing. However, with the melting ice, they are unable to navigate those areas to the extent that they have before. If global warming continues without intervention, those ice sheets will permanently be lost and a large part of their culture will be erased. Fishermen are also facing new challenges. Instead of using sled dogs, they have shifted to using boats. However, due to climate change, they are experiencing freezing rain that forms glass-like ice instead of their usual ice that is established from compressed snow. This ice is equally as dangerous as white ice and can cause extreme damage to boats. The warming waters also alters fish behaviors, making catches more difficult and less predictable for an industry that accounts for 95% of Greenland's exports. The loss of culture and drastic changes to the environment have resulted in many mental health struggles and an increase in suicide rates among Inuit communities. Greenland historically has had the highest suicide rate worldwide, but it has gradually increased over the years with an average of 96 people per 100,000 people annually. However, on a more positive note, Inuit communities have begun to apply technology along with their traditional knowledge to maintain resilience by adapting hunting practices and navigating environmental changes through these harsh times. These types of technology include digital mapping and geoengineering. Along with technological advancements, these communities are participating in collaborative research projects that merge Indigenous expertise with scientific data to create the best strategies for survival in their changing environment.
All right, so why is this land so significant and how is that impacted by climate change? Looking at the map of the Arctic from this perspective shown here gives some idea on that. Greenland strategically sits between North America and Europe and is midway between Washington, D.C. and Moscow. Historically, Greenland has been used by the US military for bases that monitor the land, sky, and the sea. This has been done during World War II and the Cold War. If tensions rise further between Russia and NATO states, Greenland would quickly become a key area of interest. Greenland also sits on many resources. The US Geological Survey found that Greenland could hold 17.5 billion barrels of oil, as well as having 25 of the 34 rare earth minerals. Much of this is under Greenland's ice sheet, which covers 80% of the land. So while the IPCC Living Atlas shows that Greenland's interior is projected to warm slower than the ice sheets in the Arctic Ocean, continued warming will make these resources more available and desirable. Currently, oil drilling is banned, and then much of Greenland is under environmental protection. The Arctic and Greenland are of interest to China as part of their Belt and Road Initiative, a global infrastructure and economic development strategy aimed at strengthening connectivity and cooperation with partnered nations. In the Arctic, this is known as the Polar Silk Road, and the US has strong objections to this. But utilizing Arctic shipping routes, such as the Northern Passage and the Northern Sea Route, this will cut off 10 days and up to 4,000 kilometers of travel between Asia and Europe, saving a lot of fuel. China also has interest in the rare earth minerals. Currently, China is the world's leader in manufacturing these minerals into electronic technology. This is one reason the US wants control of Greenland for quote unquote national and international security, as Trump has put it. In 2025, Donald Trump expressed interest in taking control of Greenland, reasoning this is to protect North America from our adversaries, China and Russia, saying Canada and European countries have not done enough to fortify the Arctic, so it's up to the US to step up taking that control. But the European Council, or the European Union, Arctic Council, NATO and European NATO countries have stood against Trump's threats of seizing control of the land and is in support of Greenland's sovereignty. As Arctic trade routes open up, and that is shown here with the Northern Passage that goes through the Canadian Arctic Archipelago, the Northern Sea Route that goes along Russia, countries like China and Russia will see the most benefit, and the Trump administration sees this as a great threat. Recommendations given would be for the EU and NATO to continue support Greenland's sovereignty and support Greenlanders in their right to vote for their independence. The Arctic Council, an intergovernmental organization made up of Arctic states, must also work together to impose regulations on shipping to see pollution and disturbance minimized.
All right. So in conclusion, due to Arctic amplification, the Arctic region experiences climate change more intensely than other areas of the world. Warming of the oceans will continue to affect Arctic waters through thermohaline circulation. It is important that we move away from our fossil fuel dependency. At our current pace, the Arctic will continue to lose billions of tons of sea ice and see many more warming days. These changes in the environment have ripple effects. Greenland has already seen drastic changes in their environment, communities, and political attention.
And Indigenous communities are directly affected by these changes. It has influenced their lifestyle to the extent where adaptation is necessary for survival. With Inuit groups' influence on policies and scientific research, there can be many changes done to ensure their knowledge of the environment and cultural aspects of Greenland are sustained. Geopolitical tensions, while not entirely driven by climate change, will continue to be exacerbated. As long as the U.S. sees China and Russia as adversaries, the U.S. will continue to pressure Greenland and other Arctic nations to increase military and surveillance presence in the far north. Increased shipping will also prompt Arctic nations and organizations to come together in cooperation. The most sustainable future will come from one shaped by the people of Greenland as they know their land the best.
And these are our resources or our sources used. And thank you. Are there any questions?
Right. Well, first of all, I wanted to say thank you and congratulate you on this really wonderful accomplishment. Great content, great presentation, and it's a very, very timely project. You know, like I wanted to ask you, why Greenland and why now? And I think you really already gave us so much, rationale about why is it important for everyone to understand what's going on in Greenland. And I really loved your map when you showed that in a way, depending on the geographical projection, Greenland is the center of the world, right? I can right now so many different political and economic and environmental questions are really revolving around Greenland. So thank you for your very timely research. And my first question to you is just like, what unexpected challenges, like what was, you started with this project, you had many ideas. I know that you had many very ambitious goals for this project, and you have delivered very ambitious projects. But what are the major challenges and how did you overcome them?
I think it was definitely finding specific areas of research. It was really hard to not go too far out, talk about too much detail, because there is a lot that goes into our research in Greenland.
Just focusing in on the specifics and not getting sidetracked by the stuff that you can find and worry about as well. So you just realize that doesn't pertain to this. So
yeah, I think like all three of the topics that we've done with the people and the culture, the environment, and the geopolitics, all of those could be long presentations on their own. So it was really about synthesizing the data and like what is the direct impact from climate change on these things and like demonstrating that.
Yes, thank you. And I really appreciate how well you kind of braided together, this geopolitical and scientific and economic dimension of the problem. So thank you very much for doing this. It's a great presentation. For those of you who are joining us from far away, on this webinar, just wanted to remind you that the Q&A button is on the bottom of your screen. So if you want to send any questions to our wonderful speakers, I will read them out. I will voice them out. But meanwhile, just take your time to reflect, to write questions. I know this presentation can really stimulate many urgent questions. But my question for you: where do you see where the world will go from here, and what it means really for Greenlandic population? So Greenland, as you showed on your map, is right now an autonomous territory within Denmark, and historically they have been working with Danish government on independence for many years. Greenland is not a part of the European Union, even though Denmark is, and Greenland has representation in the Danish parliament. It has 2 seats, I believe, holding in the parliament. So how the present geopolitical context and climate change and this hunger of the world for mineral resources of Greenland might affect this trajectory towards independence? So is the population of Greenland feeling safe enough right now to continue on the gradual journey of independence from Denmark that could potentially kind of distance them away from the European Union and NATO, perhaps? Or would it actually stimulate that quest for independence, and like, what are your thoughts, especially in the context with of political ambitions in the United States towards this region?
Yeah. First, would you like us to stop sharing our screen, or?
That's entirely up to you. If you want to use the screen and point on any particular slide that might help with answers, it might be helpful, but it's entirely up to you.
All right, we'll leave it up. To answer that question, I think, it's really, really hard to predict the future of geopolitics, but from my research, I've seen that since 2009, the move to gain full independence has been very, very popular in the elections in Greenland. But I also know that they do receive a lot of needed aid from Denmark. So I think as there are interesting situations with the US showing interest, I think the people may feel it's like a safer option to have that connection with Denmark and to the European Union and NATO, and have that aid. But still, the idea of independence is on everybody's mind. And NATO's a tricky one. But I think I know a lot has been impacted by the war in Ukraine. So making the territory of Greenland an important location. So I would say that if they are sticking to where they are now with Denmark, that's probably what they're going to want to do, especially with, I said this before, but the US showing interest, because I know a lot of NATO troops have been sent in to do military exercises, sort of protecting the land a little bit, making it a little more awkward if the US were to show up there and do something. Anyone else have anything to say on that?
I agree with her. I think, if I recall, they talked about that they were appreciating more being a part of Denmark just because of the situation. So I think it'd be a time before they, move for independence. Right now, the world is not completely, it's unstable, and making big moves like that might not be on their, right now on their radar.
Thank you. I really appreciate your analysis. Of course, there are so many questions that, we just don't know what is the future. So it is a very unstable world. My second question is that I know that you have put lots of work in exploring on how climate change is expanding opportunity for transportation, right? For shipping around Greenland and on both sides of Greenland. And so I know that, you have explored, or at least, you had an intention at the beginning of this project to explore possibly how all this rush of transportation and, additional shipping into this area is going to affect the environment, right? So not only this region is already disproportionately affected by very fast climate change, but also bringing more ships, having all this very active traffic around the coast of Greenland, how this would affect the environment and how this could potentially contribute to climate change even more. Any thoughts on this?
I did a little bit of, you did more of the environment, but I saw a little bit about shipping, and it talked about how the soot and the black carbon from the ships are affecting the environment, how they get into the clouds and it reflects heat back onto the land and more increasingly than it has before, and it leads to more ice melting, which is our main negativity about that. But
so a big issue with it is what is attached to the shipping. The ships, as they come through, they bring in other species that will end up growing with the water getting warmer in the Arctic. They call it Atlantification, where there's Atlantic waters seeping in kind of at the ports of, or well, not at the ports, but at the entryways of the Northwest Passage. And it's kind of moving in the Atlantic water further. There's more primary productivity, more invasive species, which are helping with the advancing of more subarctic species. They're coming up and out competing the species that live there, and they have nowhere to go because it's warming and they don't go further north. So it's kind of just a disruption altogether in the environment, as well as to the people that live there, because they're actually making a lot of money on tourism and they have them go through, but I don't think it's always what they think is the best thing to do, but it's a way to make money. So
It's a great point. And I was wondering, like as well, like as you are showing Atlantification, more different species, warmer temperatures, what are the impacts on this on fisheries and on traditional foodways of indigenous people, how it's going to affect their diet, how it's going to affect their lifestyle? And I am passionate about this question because I just came back, as you know, I just came back from MSU, from the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Summit here in Michigan, and I see many similarities between, what happened to indigenous food systems in North America and what could happen under the different political regime in Greenland and elsewhere.
Yeah, due to the warming, a lot of animals, including fish, are definitely altering how they normally would, their normal patterns. It's really hard for indigenous communities, especially since they've been there for so long. They know all of their, like all the fish's natural like habitats where they would be. But now that with all the warming and the Atlantification, it's changing a lot of their, it's definitely pushing a lot of fish out. And the fishing community or the fishing industry in Greenland is is the biggest exporting wise, and they make a lot of money off of that also. So it's really hard for them to not be able to catch as much as they used to before. It definitely is a big hit on their economics. But yeah, I saw a lot about how since due to the ice thinning and melting, it's becoming a lot more dangerous for them to actually go out and hunt, like physically, especially with dog sleds and everything like that. It's definitely putting a damper on their cultural aspect. The ice sheets have broken up a lot also and throughout the entire Arctic. So they used to have a straight shot through the whole circle with the dog sleds, but now that it's broken up, it's very hard for them to get to those places that they used to get to before, which is very sad to read about, honestly, because they feel like they're losing a big part of their culture, which is really unfortunate.
Thank you all. Thank you for your great presentation. So once again, I want to give you a big round of applause, and I hope the audience online also can join me in giving a huge round of applause to Antonia, Sarah, and Eva. Thank you for your great presentation. I just wanted to remind that this is going to be posted. You would find these presentations at the Student Scholar Day website, and also at the Climate Change Education Solutions Network website and YouTube channel. So thank you for being here, and I will see you next week, and I will see all our audience at the next webinar. So have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.